Danny, man. First off, thank you for taking the time, man. Obviously we've it's been a joy to watch you from afar and then getting a chance to build a relationship with your friendship and admiring a lot of the stuff you have done and are doing in the space. And then when I was doing my research for this, I found out that you come from a lineage of entrepreneurs. So I really want to start there, man, and talk about your father and your grandfather and some of the lessons that you took away from them about entrepreneurship and really how to be a appropriate and respectable businessman. What are some of the things that you learned from them?
First of all, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. We know each other now for quite a while, so great to be on your podcast. Yeah, actually, that is interesting. As you did your research, and it's true. My father is an entrepreneur, my grandfather. So when I was growing up at the kitchen table, when I was sitting there as a little boy, that was already the conversations that were going on. I was listening to it and learning from my dad and my grandfather. But I didn't realize at that time, right? Because again, I was a little boy just growing up. But the hard work and how they build their business successfully, and just how they're approaching business in a very honest and truthful way. That's how it started at a young age. Actually, I started with my career in the corporate world. I was helping my dad and my grandfather already when I was at a younger age, just helping them at the business. But I started actually in the corporate world. So I started working for Vodafone. It's a big telecom provider over in Europe. I worked there for 6 years. I made some great steps there, mainly in business development and marketing. And then I was recruited by Sony. So I was responsible for Vodafone at that time at Sony because they knew, okay, Danny was working there for 6 years, knows the people on C-level. So the office was in Amsterdam. That's where I'm from. I'm from the Netherlands. That's where it all started. And also an office in London at times. So I was traveling between those two countries. That was a great journey, learning a lot. I worked for also a period for T-Mobile, Tele2, that's another telecom provider. I was responsible for three strategic accounts, and I was able to close a big RFP that time for 12 million. And then I thought, okay, I always knew I wanted to start my own business. I had that bug in me, and I said, okay, how can I? But I was waiting for the right time and the right opportunity. And I started a production agency. The name is Enterprise Media. I started that with my former business partner, a creative director, super talented guy, creating awesome content. And we joined forces. So I was more on the strategy side, setting up the agency and scaling that. And we were able to work with Walt Disney, Disney Channel, ABN AMRO, big corporate organizations over in Europe and in the Netherlands. So I quit my high paid corporate job. And to be honest, my wife was not so happy with me because we were stable, it was all going. But I thought, okay, I needed to do this. I wanted to start my own business. So I did that. And that worked out. So that company did well. It was a great learning curve. I sold my shares, not for a huge exit, to be honest, but it was just a great how do you set up your first venture? Where do you need to look at? How do you scale a business? All these things for me as a first time founder. And after that, I joined a group and I co founded One Halves. That's an
Mhm.
agency that's affiliated to 433. And 433 grew out to the biggest soccer community in the world. That was so my business partner, professional soccer player there, and I set up the agency. And my responsibility there was mainly the monetization on the 433 channel. And the community was growing, and we were very thoughtful. Okay, how can you actually monetize a community like that, right? Because and actually we could earn much more money in the beginning. But for us, it was really important, and this was already 8, 9 years back. How can you make sure you come up with the right clients and making sure this we monetize this in the right way. So in the end, I had around 50 people more or less in my team in Amsterdam. We worked with clients like Nike, Adidas, FC Barcelona, Real Madrid, PSG, a lot in the sports. And that went well. So we said, okay, let's open a second office in New York City. So I moved 6 years ago to New York City with my wife and two little boys to run the business here in the States. And working here with Nike, Adidas, Budweiser, big also brand in the soccer, official partner with the MLS. And then a third office in Los Angeles. So that's where I'm living for the last 4 years. And I was able to sell my shares. So I did that. And then after that, I thought, okay, what's next? What's my why, right? What do I want to do? And for me, it was really entrepreneurship is just something that I love. Coming back to that first, right? Growing up in that entrepreneurial family. And I just saw that so many entrepreneurs are failing, actually. If you look at the figures, 80% of the startups are failing within the 5 first years. So that's why I launched InStudio Ventures, mainly to decrease that failing rate and then focused on sports and media, because that's what we know, all the GPs in the fund and myself, that's where we really can add value.
Yeah, 100%. You kind of beat me to the punch, but I want to take a step back before we get to in studio and talk about your experience building community and building 433 and one and a halves. What were some of the takeaways that you learned from those experiences? Because you came from telecom, which is completely different from
Yeah.
sports, I would imagine. Like, are
Yeah.
there any things any adjustments that you had to make, or like things that you learned within working with those brands that you were able to really kind of stand on and lay the foundation for your success?
Yeah, no, great question. So yeah, let's go back to the corporate world. I think working in the corporate world for almost 10 years, that a lot of people asking me also that question, okay, didn't you want to start your entrepreneurial journey just right away, right? Instead of starting in the corporate world. And my answer is actually no, because I learned so much just about some foundations and basics in the corporate world, what are normal there, and specific trainings. I'm working there with top clients for these corporate organizations, right? I was managing multi-million accounts there. So for me, learning there how to manage these accounts and making sure you approach it in the right way, that's definitely for me a basic structure. And then jumping into my entrepreneurial journey and then more to the media side. I always had a passion for content. For me, it's still something magical creating
Mhm.
the content. So I always had a passion for that. But in the end, it's also about the team, right? I never could do this by myself. Also, all the credit to all the people that I work with, because that's the combination. What are my strengths? Where do I excel in? And how do I work with the best people out there to combine that and then scaling these companies? And I think that was something that we did very well. And then we're able to work with clients like Nike or Adidas, and then working with these brands for long-term partnership. It was not just a one-off deal and then putting the brand on our side, what you sometimes see with these
Yeah.
agencies. These are long-term relationships where we deal multiple deals.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And getting back to in studio, what you've been building now and have been building for the past couple of years. Talk a little bit more about you mentioned the premise and why you wanted to start it, but talk about some of the companies that you guys work with and some of the opportunities you're looking for.
Yeah, sure. So InStudio Ventures investment firm, right? So we are investing in sports and media. We launched multiple funds. The main focus for us is on the later stage fund and later stage that are Series A investments. So the companies need to do at least 1 million in ARR, so 1 million revenue per year. And again, it's sports, 80% in sports and 20% in media. These companies, yeah, need to be in this niche. And then for us, what's important are these exclusive opportunities. Because I think on a daily basis, I think almost 15, 20 people are reaching out to me, pitching all kind of ideas. But for us, we are very critical, obviously, to make sure, okay, one, it's an exclusive opportunity where we can add value. So it's not that we're just throwing money at companies, but is there something in our ecosystem where we really can add value with all the things that we've built as a team? And to give you a concrete example, we invested in the boardroom company from Kevin Durant and Rich Kleiman. So we're the lead investor there, and involved there with scaling the boardroom. All the credit to the team there. I think they're doing an amazing job building the brand stronger and stronger every day, and launching multiple revenue streams to actually scale that. I don't know if you saw, but also launching the membership
Yeah.
model. What I think is amazing because a lot of people want to be involved in the boardroom community, but now giving access to all the amazing opportunities in the network that the boardroom built, I think is a great opportunity for a lot of people. So that's a concrete example. We're now looking to close a deal with the MBA equity team. The MBA equity team invested in 37 companies. one company, one launchpad in 2023. The NBA has almost 5% equity in this company, and the NFL put a 4 million grand into this company. And we are now joining with our expertise to scale that company. So that's another concrete example, and it's an MRI scan. So where you normally go 45 minutes in an MRI scan, this company decreases that to almost 10, 15 minutes. And with our background in soccer and the global scale, we can actually add value and help scaling this company. So that's another example.
Nice. I think I know the company you're talking about. We won't mention
Yeah.
them on the recording, but I want to jump back to Katie and Rich because obviously, like I've worked with the boardroom team. I have a
Yeah.
lot of respect for them. I think what Katie and Rich have built already is incredible. Can you talk about, working closely with them, the relationship they have, and what makes them different or unique from other, athlete business manager partnerships that you've seen within the sports landscape or ecosystem?
It starts with trust, right? I think that's also we're working also with a lot of athletes in our ecosystem. They're part of our investment firm, soccer players, NBA, NFL, and I think that that's where it starts. And I think if you just see the relationship between Rich and KD, nothing or somebody can come in between that, right?
Yeah.
They're working already for such a long time with each other, and it's not just chasing some money. It's really thinking outside the box and building a real, for me, from my perspective, almost a blueprint into the ecosystem, how KD built his empire, right? Not he's the great player on the pitch, 4 Olympics medals, right? In a lifetime deal with Nike, with Michael Jordan, LeBron James, and KD. So that puts him already in a different bucket. But then if you look off the field, what he was able to achieve there with 35 ventures and the boardroom, I think that's a very smart and great decision what the team was able to achieve, and especially Rich as his business partner, but also the team behind it. I think that's just a smart thing. They are on top of the best opportunities there, made great investments in that ecosystem to build up KD's longer term generational wealth and creating impact in the industry, not also there just chasing some money, but all the investments that he made, I think there are definitely interesting investments like Whoop, like the PSG deal, or in women's sports where he's involved, and that we are there at a historical moment. I think that's something where I have a lot of respect for what the company built. And then on top of that, the boardroom is just because I think a lot of athletes trying to launch an agency, but also a lot of are not able to build it on the level that now the boardroom is, or maybe Spring Hill, with LeBron and
Yeah.
Maverick. These guys also did a great job there. And now with the merge, right, you see that was a unique positioning. And the same for the boardroom. I think what if you look at the ecosystem and what they now were able to build, the community for sports, business, and culture, building a community online, but also offline. If you look at the events for last year, 12 events with all the big sporting events with the Formula One, NBA All Stars, NFL Draft, with the US Open. If you see the people, what they are bringing together, it's invite only, but if you're there, it's really right. The people are connecting and helping
Yeah.
each other. So yeah, again, I think it's something unique what the guys are building, and they're just getting started. There's so much more to come with the boardroom. So I'm very excited about that partnership and that investment.
Yeah, 100%, man. Going back to your point about the events they curate, like there's a ton of value in those rooms, and you see a lot of business connections and opportunities that come directly from that kind of community and the things that they're doing on the event side, especially. But I want to talk about in studio for a second and really, you guys, as you mentioned, work with a lot of different athletes, but I want to hone in on Jameis Winston because I think he's unique for a number of different reasons. One being his charisma, his personality. He's very personable. He's out in the community. He's engaging with fans. Talk a little bit about how this partnership came about, and can you kind of speak to his passion and knowledge for business?
Jamie is just a great, humble, and just a good person from my perspective, where I was able to connect with a couple years back. It started actually at Harvard. So I did two things. One was the I think if people in sports, they definitely know Anita
Yeah.
Alberse, the professor, right? She has her own program in sports business. and entertainment. That one is where I started. After that, I graduated for my executive MBA at Harvard. But that program is where Jamie's and I met, and also Jamie's. Look, I think that was a very more organic way to get to know each other in a classroom, learning, and we connected there. And actually, afterwards, he hit me up also when he was in LA with his family, and we grabbed a breakfast together with my family. So my wife was involved, my two boys, his two sons, and it was that way how he calls we break bread and making sure, okay, that's the way how you connect, and not just only holding your hand and asking for the investment. No, there was a very organic way, and just also looking how he's raising his kids, right? I think that says a lot about the person. How are you doing that? How are you treating your wife? And all these kind of things are small things, but crucial from my perspective between relationships between people instead of looking only from a business perspective. And I think that was a great way to start our relationship between us, because again, the families know each other, we know each other, and that's how it started growing. And then for Jamie's especially, and also just in general with also the other athletes, as I mentioned, we're working with a lot of athletes, but also I was at the Super Bowl. We were at the media row, and also if you listen to Jamie's podcast, what we did together, he's every time he's explaining about why he joined InStudio Ventures. One, because of the trust, and two, because of the educational part. So what we are doing is also, if we have a deal flow meeting, if we're looking at a startup investments, I'm inviting Jamie's and the team where he can learn. And that's such an important part that we say, okay, we just open up our doors. If you want to listen and learn from the VC industry, and that's something that is different from my perspective, where we are talking, for example, about a cap table. But maybe a lot of athletes don't know exactly what that means. For us in the VC industry or investment, it's a normal term. Small things like that, and just analyzing deals. Why is it great investments, or why do we decline this deal? That's something that also, especially Jamie's is appreciating a lot, and where he's learning, and where I also ask from him, okay, if you come to this meeting, be prepared, right? Make sure you do your homework, and for when he is retiring, he wants to feel comfortable in the boardroom, and also making sure I understand where I'm investing in, and not just throwing some money at a deal and actually not really understanding why I'm investing in this deal. So that's something that's working very well.
100%. Obviously, with KD, Jameis, we're talking about the top of the top, some of that best athletes in the world. These athletes are going to have opportunities when they're done playing. That's just is what it is, you know. But with some of the athletes who don't have that notoriety and fame, do you feel like it's necessary for athletes to start integrating themselves within the business world, start learning about investment and really taking advantage of opportunities while they're playing? Do you think that's something every athlete should be doing, no matter what level or stage or sport they play?
Yeah, I would say yes, especially also when you're playing. Look, also we talking with Jamie's, Cody, all these. I have a lot of players from overseas who playing on Champions League clubs. The number one priority is still being the top athlete, and all the priorities there, right? Jamie's, I know on Tuesdays in the afternoon, I know I can call him. He has time off, and it's easier to jump on calls if it's related to what we're doing. So always that's the first priority. But yes, I would say let's already start when you're playing, because that's the moment, right, that you already can start learning, instead of when you're retiring and then you actually don't know what to do and then start working on it. We see examples like KD, who's playing at the top, also did that, right? He's still playing. Jamie's also is still playing, and you, to your point, these are the top, but also these guys already start doing it right now. So my advice is also, if you maybe are not on that level, yes, already start exploring. If you let's be honest, if you feel that's something, a path that interests you, right? Because I also have players, some they just want to see the quarterly report, and they it's just not. And I also have a lot of these guys are very hungry and want to learn, and building that long-term generational wealth. And again, that you really understand where you're investing in. Because I think in the end, that's the most important thing. If people pitching me I don't know, a biotech company or fintech, yes, it's interesting, but we stay in a lane and we're investing. And I think also, especially for these athletes, sports is their number one priority. So investing or building businesses in sports, I think that's for a lot of them that makes sense because they really get what the sports industry is doing and they can also add value there.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And you talk about this narrow lane and some of the opportunities that you all have been able to take advantage of, and companies you've been able to invest in. What areas? Because obviously sports is pretty general. What areas of sports media are you most interested in, or see the most upside in at this
Sure.
moment?
So for us, it's a little bit of a mix. So it's sports general, but if you click on it, sports technology. So
Mhm.
the sports market, as you know, around 500 billion, 625 will go to 800. Sports technology market is definitely something where we're looking in all the innovation that's happening in sports. That's also quite broad, but if you look at these figures, it will go to 103 billion more or less in 2030. That's the expectation. 43% of that is in fan engagement. So that's definitely a pillar where we're looking at. The personalized content is something that's interesting, right? Okay, it's not just if look, I was watching the full game and my son is just also watching highlights. He's consuming this content in a different way, and all the data that's affiliated to this. How can we analyze that and making more personalized content? That's a pillar. We're looking opportunistic at clubs and leagues. So you call it the barbell effect. So one is more the premium leagues, like maybe the NBA, NFL, or these kind of leagues. That's more a safer bet that you will not 100x this investment. That's not realistic, but it outperformed the S&P 500 already, right, for decades. So we see that as an opportunity where we actually now talking also for an opportunity with the NFL. And at the other hand, we're looking at the emerging leagues. So that's something that interests us, where we're looking at Unrivaled, I think, is a great example. What's now challenging the WNBA, right? Because with the negotiations and things, I think for players, it's an interesting moment where a league like the Unrivaled can challenge the WNBA with everything that's happening. And what the players can put pressure on the WNBA negotiations because, right, Unrivaled is coming up as a disruptor and more as an innovator. So I think we're on a very interesting moment. What we're looking closely at, so it's again sports technology, clubs and leagues combined with data, where we're almost creating our own ecosystem that it can work with each other.
What are some misconceptions that investors might have about getting into the sports industry? Because now we're seeing family offices and various private equity funds all seeing, this asset class, which is hot, booming. What are some things they might not understand about this industry that's very, different from other asset classes?
Yeah, look, from my perspective, it always starts because it's now booming. You cannot follow just the hype and just go after shiny object. That's not how it works, right? Because then in the end, especially with your investor hat on, it's going much deeper than that. Women's sports, we all see the figures, WNBA and WSL, but not all these investments will be great. It's a long-term yeah, you need to have deep pockets and you really need to understand what you're doing. It's not just jumping on this WNBA team and see it as a trophy asset and being part of that. No, really, I think the strategic money is so important also for these family office or people who want to step into the sport ecosystem. Again, it's really understanding what's going on there and what are the right opportunities and making sure you're working there with the right people who've done it before. Also, we spoke with the WNBA, with Ellen and Co. and different kind of people. There's an Austin bid right now. You need to make sure that group is a strategic group and is really able to add value there on the long term. And I think that for me, maybe a misconception. It's not just jumping on all these opportunities, so much deal flow going on. Again, also what's coming to us. But to be honest, there's also a lot of crap. It's not all great. There are a couple, it's a small percentage, and that's coming back how I started this conversation, especially in the early stage. 80% of these startups are failing.
Mhm.
So let's be honest, it's not easy to jump on the right opportunity. Also, not in sports. Yes, it's a growing market, but being able to have access to vetted and exclusive deals. That's also how we are looking at it. In the beginning, a couple of years back, I looked at 1,000 startups, right? I just did looking every year. Now we have key partners in the ecosystem that we know if they share a deal with us, that's a vetted deal. We know this is high quality, the people really understand what's going on. And then still, we do long and deep due diligence, making sure it's the right investment. So it's not so easy as just jumping on and going into the sports industry because it's booming. There's still much more homework to do.
Yeah, 100%. That's really good advice. And before we kind of wind down here, I got one main question I want to ask you because I asked Wayne Kimmel. I don't know if you know Wayne Kimmel, but I
Sure.
asked
Yeah,
him
yeah,
asked
yeah,
him
of
this
course.
question. He
Of
kind of
course.
skirted around it a little bit, but I want to see if you can nail it. If you have, obviously sports across the globe is booming. You have basketball; it's becoming much more global. Soccer is obviously the biggest sport in the world. But if you had one sport to bet all your money on, put all your eggs in one basket on one sport, what sport would that be?
Yeah, for me, it's soccer. That's also my
Soccer.
background. Right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Again, it's still the global biggest sports. If you look at the numbers, that's where I build up my knowledge. I have the biggest network over there. I know the clubs overseas, the names of FC Barcelona, Real Madrid, or people at PSG. That's how I grew up as a little boy playing soccer, right? That's still so close to my heart. I think with everything in Europe, it's still the number one sport. Yesterday, unfortunately, Liverpool was kicked out of the Champions League against PSG. But that's a side thing. One of our LPs is playing for that. That's the reason why I'm mentioning it. But I think with the opportunity also here in the United States, I think that's an interesting bridge between Europe and the US with how it's growing and the ecosystem. The FIFA World Cup is this year, then the World Cup next year. I think that's an interesting time to look at it. We're still not there. I don't know if you saw, but the relevant group bid on the Champions League rights. That's something that's happening. That's an interesting thing. Okay, also for to see more viewership here in the United States. But what happens after the World Cup, right? If we peak, what will happen then? I'm still bullish. I'm still bullish on it, and I think there is a great opportunity for us, especially with my background being from Europe and now living here for already more than 6 years in the United States, bringing that knowledge here to the US and being part of that ecosystem. And again, that's what I'm mentioning multiple times in this podcast. That's why I have the knowledge and the ecosystem where I really can add value. It's broader than that. But if you ask me where do you would put your money if you need to choose, then it would be, I call it football, by the way, not soccer.
That's right. That's right.
Global football. But yeah, that's my answer.
I appreciate that, man. You can't go wrong with it. So that was a really insightful answer. Last question, man. Give me one prediction that you have for the sports investment ecosystem over the next, let's say, 3 to 5 years. Like, what are you paying attention to? What do you think has a ton of upside? Like, one prediction that you have.
Yeah, look, it sounds maybe it's just the market and overall we see the growth, right? So we're very that's one thing that will happen. And then if you click on it, that's macro level. If you zoom in more on a micro, we're still looking closely at women's sports. That's definitely something ever in every event and conference, people are talking about it. But that's something also for our fund where we closely looking at we want to be part of that historical moment and also make sure we create an impact there together with youth sports is also very important for us. I have two little boys myself. Just standing up in the morning and making sure you just not only chase money but actually doing something great for the world. Those two things, I would say that's something where we are looking closely at and where you also actually creating impact into the world.
I love it, man. Danny, appreciate it. Lastly, let everybody know where they can find out more about InStudio Ventures, find out more about you, and connect with you.
For sure. So in Studio Ventures, you can look at our website in studioventures.com. You can also look up my personal account. So Danny Cortenraede. Maybe we can throw it in somewhere because it is a difficult name. But you can look me up on Instagram, LinkedIn, all the different places. And would happy to connect if somebody in the ecosystem wants to talk about sports, business, or culture. Just hit me up. And yeah, thanks so much, Malcolm, for having me. Appreciate it as always.
For sure. Thank you, brother.